If you enjoyed looking at trees, fields, and spending long stretches of time alone, it was probably perfect. For me, it felt isolating. The moment I had a car and enough money, I left. I do not dislike nature, but I would choose living near a big city any day. My parents no longer own that land. They sold it about 5 years ago. To give you an idea, it was a 3-acre property with a fairly large house and a storage building behind it. My parents often left me home alone because they trusted me. I had matured early and handled responsibilities around the property. One weekend, I was in the living room playing Vice City on my PS2 when I suddenly heard a loud metallic crash coming from somewhere outside. I immediately ran from window to window, trying to spot anything unusual. I saw nothing at first, until I reached the window facing the storage building. Its door was wide open. Without hesitation, I grabbed the rifle from the closet and stepped outside. I shouted to announce myself, asking who was there, but no one responded. As I approached the building, I made it clear I was armed before even looking inside. The building was cluttered with equipment, a riding mower, a quad, and countless small tools. Someone could have hidden anywhere. I was not easily frightened as a kid, but at that moment, I felt deeply uneasy. I decided to shut the door and go back inside. Once inside, I locked the door and stayed by the window for a long time, watching the storage building. I expected the door to swing open at any second. It was heavy and could not have opened on its own. Someone had definitely been there. I was unsure whether that person was still inside, so I decided to call my dad for advice. I went to the kitchen and used the landline to call his cell phone. He did not answer, so I left a voicemail. Back then, texting was not common, so voicemail was the only option. Afterward, I returned to the window and turned on the TV just to break the silence. I kept the phone with me. My heart jumped into my throat. I had to figure out if I was imagining things, or if someone was actually inside. I felt protective of the house. I picked up the rifle again and slowly went upstairs. When I reached the top, I turned on the hallway light. There were 5 closed doors. 4 were bedrooms, and 1 was the bathroom. Each had a noticeable gap at the bottom. The sound I heard came from the direction of my parents' bedroom. I got down on my knees and looked through the gap under that door. I saw 2 bare feet pointed away from the door. My stomach tightened instantly. At that moment, everything became real. I stood up, hurried downstairs, and hid in the bathroom to call my dad again. He still did not answer. I left another voicemail and kept calling, but there was no response. He must have left his phone somewhere. Finally, I called 911, which I should have done right away. The operator told me to stay in the bathroom and remain silent. Soon after, I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. They stopped right outside the bathroom door, as if the person somehow knew where I was. There was a pause, and then a deep voice said, "What's up, kid?" I still remember that voice clearly. If I heard it today, I would recognize it instantly. I felt like I might cry from fear. I said loudly that I was on the phone with the police and that I had a gun. I switched the call to speaker as the operator kept asking if I was okay. The man tried to open the door. His footsteps faded, followed by the sound of a door slamming. It was the back door. I finally felt a small sense of relief and waited for the police to arrive. When they did, it felt like a massive weight had been lifted from me. They searched the house thoroughly, inside and out, and confirmed the man was gone. They asked if I had somewhere else to stay that night, and I told them I could go to my uncle's house. We called my uncle, who arrived and spoke with the officers before taking me with him. I had left the door unlocked when I went out to check the storage building. That must have been when the man entered the house. Even with a rifle in my hands, I did not feel safe at all. It remains the most terrifying experience I have ever had. I was 18 when my parents left for a week to celebrate their anniversary. My sister had already moved out, so I was the only one at home taking care of things. Our house sits on a piece of land surrounded by woods, with a long dirt driveway connecting it to the road. The road itself is a quiet back route, lined with similar-sized properties spaced far apart. It gives the whole area a very secluded feeling. In a town like that, everyone tends to know each other. You usually recognize people wherever you go, whether it is at the gas station, the grocery store, or later on, the bars once I was old enough to go. This story actually begins at a gas station while my parents were away. I was filling my car when a black Jeep Cherokee pulled up beside me. A man with a goatee got out, said hello, and started pumping gas. That kind of greeting was completely normal in our town. After setting the nozzle, he walked over to my side and asked if I could tell him how to get to the interstate. I explained the directions as best as I could. He took out a small notepad and wrote everything down, which struck me as strange, since most people would just use their phone. He thanked me and asked if I was from around there. I told him I had grown up there, and he mentioned he was from out of town, without saying where exactly. He returned to his side, finished up, and then asked for my name, saying it was nice meeting me. I told him my name was Kate. A few minutes later, I reached our driveway. I slowed down, turned on my signal, and made the right turn onto the property. That was when I noticed the same black Jeep behind me. He drove past me as I turned in. What stood out was that he was heading in the opposite direction of the route I had just given him. He did not slow down, so I assumed he might have gotten confused and gone the wrong way. I went inside and continued with my day. As I stepped outside and walked toward my car, I heard footsteps somewhere nearby. Since the house is surrounded by woods and it was summer, I assumed it could have been an animal and did not check. I just got in my car and left. Hours later, when I came back and walked from the car to the house, I suddenly heard a man's voice from the woods call out my name, Kate. I froze for a moment, then rushed to the door in panic. I slammed it shut behind me and sat down, trying to catch my breath. The neighbors all knew me, but their houses were not close enough for that kind of behavior, and it made no sense for someone to call out like that without showing themselves. I called my parents and told them what happened. They suggested it was probably a neighbor and said they might come by the house. I did not mention the man from the gas station. The next day was Saturday. I stayed inside most of the time. Later that night, I was planning to meet my friends again. After getting ready, I stepped outside, and as I walked toward my car, I clearly heard someone call my name again from nearby. This time, I did not hesitate. I ran straight back inside and locked the door. I called 911 while texting my family at the same time. 2 officers came, walked around the property with flashlights, and then told me to call again if it kept happening. It did not make me feel much better, since they did not find anything. I avoided going outside until the next day when I had to go to work. It was a late shift, but I left during daylight, nervous that I might hear that voice again. Thankfully, I did not. I parked in front of the house and walked toward the door. Then I heard footsteps again. This time, it did not sound like an animal. I paused on the front porch, listening. Then the same voice called out again, saying, "Hey, do not call the cops on me again, cutie." I shouted back that he needed help and that he was sick, then hurried inside. I called the police again. They came, searched the area once more, and left again. My parents suggested I stay at a friend's place for the night, which I agreed with. They would be home the next evening, so I just needed to get through one night. My friend Alex said I could stay with her. I packed a bag and got ready to leave. Before going outside, I checked the windows to make sure everything looked clear. I stepped out, locked the door quickly, and ran to my car. As soon as I started the engine, I heard movement to my left. A man wearing a face mask was right outside the driver's side door, trying to open it. I could not even scream. It felt like I could not breathe. As I shifted into drive, he began hitting the window with his elbow. I drove across the grass, sped down the driveway, and turned onto the road without stopping until I reached Alex's house. I was crying the entire way, on the phone with her and her dad. He told me he would have come to get me if he had known what was happening. Together, we called the police again for the third time. Officers went back to my parents' house to check for damage. Another officer came to Alex's house, where I explained everything again. In such a quiet tone, this was probably the most activity those officers had seen in a long time. My parents returned the next day, and I finally felt safe again at home. I truly believe the man from the gas station followed me on purpose, watched the house, realized I was alone, and kept bothering me until he tried to attack. I should not have told him my real name. I also should have paid closer attention and noticed that he was following me that day. Some people are seriously disturbed and have too much time on their hands. That experience pushed me to move into my own apartment a few months later. I was by myself at home one night, though I cannot recall why. The only thing I clearly remember is that my whole family was out. I was around 15 or 16 at the time. I spent a lot of time gaming back then. I was really into StarCraft, and honestly, I would sometimes spend entire weekend nights playing it or other PC games. This happened just before the COVID lockdown began. I was in my bedroom on the first floor, playing StarCraft on my computer, when the doorbell rang. 2 times. I rushed to answer it because I did not want to stay away from my game too long and risk losing. When I got to the front door, I asked who it was, like I always did when I was alone. A quiet and weak voice from outside said something I could not understand. It sounded like a woman. I opened the main door, leaving the storm door closed between us, and saw an older woman standing there with a wide smile. I asked through the door if she needed anything. She said she needed to use a phone and asked if she could come inside. Ever since I was young, I had been taught never to let strangers into the house. That rule applied to everyone, including women. Still, I felt uncomfortable and unsure how to refuse her. I told her there was a library a few blocks away where she could use a phone. I knew the library was probably closed at that hour, but I just wanted this stranger, who was trying to get inside, to leave. She kept smiling, but what she said next did not match her expression. She said it was rude to turn away an old woman asking for help. I responded the only way I could think of, telling her my parents do not allow strangers inside. It is a strict house rule. As I apologized, I slowly began closing the door, and she just stood there, not moving, still smiling. Even though her smile never changed, it suddenly felt much more unsettling. I went back toward my room when the doorbell rang again. There was no way I was opening the door another time. That woman gave off strange vibes from the beginning. Maybe something was wrong with her. Maybe she was not fully aware of things. I had no way of knowing, and maybe it was selfish to send her away. But I was not about to open the door for anyone while I was home alone. I returned to my game. It was a metallic, clinking noise. The window was right in front of my desk. The blinds were closed, so I could not see what was causing it, but I already had a strong suspicion. My room was the only one in the house with the lights on. The terrifying thought that it was the same woman from earlier, now standing outside my window, filled me with fear. I muted my computer. At that point, I did not care about the game anymore. The tapping sound continued. I decided I had enough and left for another room. I sat in the dark living room for a while when the doorbell rang again. At this point, it felt like harassment. I tried convincing myself she was not dangerous, just a confused old woman who did not know where she was. When she rang the bell again, and then a third time, I decided to answer and ask if there was someone I could contact for her. But when I opened the door, There was now a man standing outside. He looked about 10 years younger than her. Through the storm door, he asked if I had seen his mother. I told him yes, she had come to my door earlier. He apologized and explained she has dementia and had wandered off. I immediately felt guilty, but then he asked if he could come inside for a moment, and that made me uneasy again. Why would he need to enter the house? I repeated what I had told the woman. I said we could talk through the door. Then I mentioned I thought she might have gone into my backyard because I heard something near my window. I told him he could go around back and check. He thanked me and walked down the side path. I assumed he went to the backyard, but when I checked from the back window, expecting to see him searching, there was no one there. Neither him nor the woman. It all felt very strange. I went to bed earlier than usual that night, falling asleep with the TV on, until I heard the same metallic tapping on the window again. Something was hitting the glass. Thinking of the man who seemed worried, I decided to try to help. I went to the window and lifted the blind slightly. The woman was standing there again, wearing that same unsettling smile. She was tapping a kitchen knife against the glass. I dropped the blind and quickly got back into bed. It did not feel real. A short while later, the doorbell rang repeatedly, around 4 times. The tapping on the window had stopped by then. Everything felt too suspicious. It seemed like an attempt to break in. I ignored the doorbell and stayed in bed, waiting it out. I did not have a cell phone back then. I was not very social growing up, and for some reason, I did not call the police either. I just waited until everything finally stopped. The next morning, I called my dad and told him what had happened. He said I did the right thing by not opening the door. Everyone agreed it sounded like an attempted robbery. Could it be that the woman really had dementia, and the man was actually her worried son? Possibly, but everything felt too planned. Why did he want to enter the house too? How did he know she came specifically to my house? Why did he never check the backyard after I told him he could? Too many questions remained unanswered, and I believe I avoided something serious by keeping that door closed.